We collect a lot of data. A lot of data that can enable you to get information about the teaching, which talks to the curriculum, implementation, and pedagogy that is at use in the classroom. We collect a lot of data that is administrative about the teacher and the wellness of that teacher through large-scale assessments. We collect a lot of information that has to do with students and things that the students are experiencing in the school environments, how the infrastructure is, how it is that they are able to move things around to even make the students post any learning outcomes. Next slide, please. We look at the qualifications of the teachers. Are we anywhere near what the global definition of a teacher is? And if so, what are the different things that we could do differently to make sure that we make learning possible and quality learning to make the students ready for the future that is coming upon them? Through the learning assessments that we carry out, next slide please, I'm trying to save time. Through the learning assessments that we are carrying out, we get experience on the capacity of our own institutions. KICD participated a lot in the various processes of rolling out PISA, which was a large-scale assessment that we did for 15-year-olds. They participated in how we do adaptation of the items. How is it that they can look at the curriculum vis-a-vis the issues that were being tested for 15-year-olds in science, maths, and living in a digital world, or learning in a digital world. We collected the data, and we did analysis. And the analysis is going to take from now up to September, which is something that I really appreciate Professor Ongondo for highlighting. It is not about drawing graphs and just running to whichever avenue that you can be able to shout the results on. It is a diligence that needs to obey the technical standards that you need to put in mind when you're collecting the data, all the way to how useful that data is going to be for any education system. Allow me to mention that in our midst today is a team from Zambia who have come specifically just to learn about the journey that we have done in learning assessments and PISA as they prepare to do it in the format that is computer-based. The countries that have participated are countries that have been mentioned to us, but they are not our competitors. So the ranking does not matter. The cost of running PISA is high. The donors in this room and those who are development partners who have been running with us know the cost. It is high. But as long as the national policy, which is the National Education Sector Plan, a strategic plan, voices that we need to monitor education, it is a cost that we should be willing to bear. And we think we need to also compare ourselves with other countries to enable them to understand where we are and the citizens that we are giving, where they are going to be in the place that they will be joining each other on different tables. I encourage that the technical meetings that we take in our various endeavors to measure education systems and monitor the education system should pronounce the technical rigor that needs to go into data collection, knowing fully well someone else somewhere will be using that data to make policy. I do not want to imagine that anybody can sidestep technical rigor and bring to the fore any statistic, because measurement is a whole field where assigning a percentage to a cohort or a group should not be taken for granted. It is not about pleasing anybody, not the teacher, not the parent, not the education system, but to tell us the truth based on the rigor, the technical rigor that comes with the meetings that you have to hold. I also want to speak to some of the specific data that PISA has already teased out. I encourage those running the slides to move faster, because we have some initial statistics that we can be able to talk about. What were our sources of information? The school level, we had a lot of participation that was coming in, 100% cooperation, trusting that this information will be used to make a change in the education system. For you to run a field study and collect information from 100% of the things that you had expected, who are the schools, when the schools give you access, they have trust in you that the data is going to be useful for purposes of changing the education system. And from the initial information that we also have, we have students who, when you visit them and ask them to do a test, comparing them to other 15-year-olds in the country or in the world, they're willing to do that test and they're willing to take it. So there is still a problem that we cannot attribute to the student. If you walked to a school on a date that you have already told them in advance, according to the technical standards, that I'll be coming to check on this and this, and you find 5.1% of the students are absent, that speaks something. You're only in that school for 2 days. And in those 2 days, you can look at the Kenyan scenario and 5.1% are not available, then that talks something. If you find that students define themselves as 15-year-olds, but our education data that we have, either in CHEMIS or in NEC, does not define them as 15 years old. And therefore, when they do a test and they declare their date of birth, and you find there's a disparity between the NEC database, the Ministry of Education database, and the student themselves as respondents, we have a problem. And that problem has to be systematically resolved so that we are talking about the same 15-year-olds not having 3.1% of them saying by themselves, I am not the age the government data says. That points to a problem. And when we are making decisions for the 15-year-olds, we need to make with that in mind. Next, please. Generally, and as has been attributed to by the other presenter that has done that, I would urge the media team to work with me on this. We have had the gender parity, or the near gender parity that they have talked about in other assessments. So when we are looking at the results that are going to come, we are helping that what we have to say about the girl child and the boy child will be well taken into consideration. When we looked at the grade distributions that were responding as 15-year-olds, we saw that we had two education systems that we were dealing with. We were dealing with the 844 education system and the competency-based education curriculum education system. The competency-based education system gave us at least 56% of the respondents, while the 844 cohort, who are then in Form 2 and now have moved to Form 3, were around 44%. But it drew from anybody who was in Form 2 all the way to Form 4, so long as you respond as a 15-year-old. That means that we will be able to have data that can speak forward from what we will have learned from the 44% and what we will learn from the 56% that are under the new competency-based education system. And when we analyze the data, we look at the different things that we need to put into consideration, not only in-country analysis, but we approach it from a point where we look at international comparisons, the benchmarks that we have to look at, the student characteristics, all the way to the types of analysis that will be communicating to the normal stakeholder what it is that we need to be doing. The frameworks are in place, and I just urge that we marry ourselves to what it is that the frameworks will be speaking to us. But as stakeholders, you have a time within which you can be able to talk to us in the different discussions that we shall be having on how it is that we can be able to look for the things, if there's anything that you have ever wanted from data that talks about 15-year-olds. This is the time that you can approach us to look at that. We already have a template that talks to what the report will look like. And the template talks to the student performance, which we hope will speak to the way in which our education system is compared to others. The students' feelings, beliefs, and attitudes towards learning Are they motivated to be in school in the first place? Most of you would remember the clip of the 15-year-old or thereabout who thought there's no need for me to continue being in school. I have a grinding machine, I have cows, I have goats, I have everything. I don't think this school business is making sense to me anymore. We will see whether